Hello, welcome to the HealthInn Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all, but sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be.
Good morning, everyone, or good evening, or good afternoon. I know you're coming in from all over the world, and we're so grateful that you're here. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the HealthInn Show, a part of Homeopathy World Community. So we are delighted to have you here. We have a great show in store, and you know I say that every time, but we do. And so I just want to remind you that you're more than welcome anytime during the show to connect with us. This is your show. This is an open invitation. We'd love to have you come into our video, right under our video. You can put your name, nickname, whatever you like, and join our chat. And you can ask questions, comment, anything you want. Or you can come in on Skype, and that would be Computers 2K Voice. That would be voice, not video, so it's all okay. We'd love to have your comments, and we'd love you to participate. So let me go ahead and introduce Uta, who without Uta, I can't even imagine. Uta, hello, honey.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Happy to be here today. I'm very excited because we have an exciting guest with us today, and the name is Dr. Gerald Pollack. He's the professor of bioengineering at the University of Washington, the founding editor and chief of Water, a multidisciplinary research journal, which is already going into the direction that we want to explore today. He's an executive director of the Institute for Venture Science, co-founder of the Fourth Phase Inc., and the list just goes on. So hello, Dr. Pollack. How are you today?
Uta, I'm thrilled, except having to get up so early in the morning in the Northwest. That's not so thrilling.
Apologies for that.
Yeah, well, it's your fault.
Yes, it is. I feel very guilty now.
You should.
But I'm glad you came. You came anyway. We're very happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. So I just read it out aloud. Fourth phase. What are we talking about if we are talking about the fourth phase of water? Let's dive right in. I'm excited to hear about this.
Okay, the fourth phase. Well, we all grow up and learn that water has three phases: the solid, liquid, and vapor. But we found the fourth phase, and the fourth phase is I'll describe it in a moment. But it's not a trivial laboratory observation. It's all over the place. This fourth phase of water, including your body. Your body is filled with this kind of water. It's not liquid water, and an easy way to convince yourself that your body is not filled with ordinary liquid water is to cut yourself. Now, if you cut yourself, if your cells and body were filled with ordinary liquid water, it would come pouring out. But for most of us, it doesn't. The water doesn't come pouring out, and so it's a different kind of water. And this is the water that we identified. I hesitate to use the word discovered because other people before us have suggested that in biology there's a different kind of water, a water that is not liquid water exactly. It's more gel-like, and that's what we discovered. And I'll just tell you a few of the most important aspects of this. The first is that the way it usually builds is if you have, let's say you have a container of water, and into the water you put a piece of material, and the material surface is so-called hydrophilic. That means water-loving. That means, if you have a horizontal surface, and you drop some water on it, the water will spread out. And so you put one like a cube of this stuff in the water, and what happens is that when the water meets the surface, it undergoes a radical change. This is what we're talking about. So first, the first molecular layer undergoes this transformation, and then the second one builds on the first, and the third one, and so on. And sheet by sheet, they build. And if you were to look at the sheet, one of those sheets, head on, face on, you'd see nothing that looks like ordinary water. It actually looks like hexagons that are linked together, a honeycomb kind of structure. And these honeycombs build on one another. And that water, we call it fourth phase water. And so that's one characteristic. That's the structural characteristic. Another one is that it's not H2O anymore. It's actually H3O2, just for information's sake. Third feature is that it's not neutral. We drink H2O and it's neutral. This is not neutral. This is typically negatively charged. So the fourth phase is negatively charged, and the water that's beyond those layers, fourth phase layers, is positively charged. And the reason for that is all of this is built from water molecules, and the water molecule itself contains plus and minus linked together. So you've got H plus and OH minus giving you H2O. So it's the OH minuses that actually gather together and build to create this water. So you've got a battery that's created. And by the way, if you stick an electrode in one electrode in the negative part, one electrode in the positive part, you get current flow. So it is indeed a battery. So that's another. And please don't think that this battery is not used in your body. This battery has potential energy, just like any battery, and that energy actually gets used to drive processes inside your body. Finally, I should say, have we mentioned all of the fundamental characteristics? Maybe it's too early in the morning, but for me. But I think just let me mention one more. As if you in the water, I mentioned you put a cube of material in the water, hydrophilic material, but added to the water are little particles, and it turns out we usually use little spheres called microspheres, and they're all over. They distribute themselves broadly and uniformly. However, when this fourth phase starts building, it pushes out all of these little spheres, and so what you have left is a microsphere-free zone. That's the fourth phase water. It's like a crystal, and as crystals grow, crystals push out all debris. It's kind of like ice, like a glacier that's growing. It pushes out all the little rocks and particles and such to make itself pure, because it can't be pure if it's got impurity. So it pushes everything out. And therefore, we sometimes refer to this water, this fourth phase water, as an exclusion zone, because it excludes. And for short, exclusion zone, at least in the US, not in Portugal, exclusion zone is EZ. You people will say EZ, but EZ is better because it's easy to remember. It's not EZ to remember. So we sometimes call it the exclusion zone or exclusion zone water, EZ water, or fourth phase water. And I use those two terms interchangeably. So that's a kind of thumbnail sketch of what we're talking about. This water is entirely distinct from ordinary liquid water, and there are probably a dozen different measures that demonstrate that it's distinct and unique. I hope that answers. Go ahead.
Well, it does answer a lot of questions, and I think my first question, now that you've started talking, and I've got lots of them. But my first question is, how did you where did this theory come from for you?
Thank you.
What made you get to this? How did you find this? What prompted you? Yeah.
A good question. And what prompted me is the influence of a guy named Gilbert Ling. I should say the late Gilbert Ling, because he passed just shy of 100 years old only this year, sadly. Gilbert Ling came from China. He was in the first cohort of people, of students, of scholars coming from China after World War II to study in the US. And you can imagine, they searched throughout China to find the three most promising young scholars, a physicist, a chemist, and a biologist. Ling was the biologist. The physicist, Yang, went on to win a Nobel Prize. And this was the quality of those three chosen from all of China. And the word has it that they all thought that Gilbert Ling was the brightest of all three of them. But Gilbert Ling was not a passive kind of guy. He said what he thought. Sometimes I got him in big trouble. And what he thought, and what he had evidence, is that the water inside the cell was different from ordinary water. And when I was a graduate student in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania, he also had been living in Pennsylvania. And I happened to be at a dinner with him, and he was sitting 3 tables away, and my next door neighbor tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you know that guy? That's the crazy guy, Gilbert Ling, who thinks that the water inside the cell is not ordinary water." And I just remember, I remember that scene because it was unusual. Someone says, "Oh, that crazy guy." It turned out that in the department in which I was educated, the chair of the department had interest in water. So-called bound water, that is water that was bound to proteins. And there was something peculiar about that, and they were studying it. It never made much of an impression on me, I must admit. It seemed awfully boring. But then 30 years later, or 25 years later, after a career pretty much studying muscles, studying the molecular mechanism of contraction, a Hungarian guy came to me, and I picked him up and his wife at the airport, and we're driving back from the airport to Seattle. And Charles said to me, he said, "You should go to Hungary. There's a meeting coming up, and this will interest you. And the meeting is to commemorate the life of a famous Hungarian biophysicist, and there were 2 areas of interest. One is water and the other is muscles. And, his ideas about muscles are not so different from your ideas about muscle. You should go to this conference and represent the field of muscle." So I went to the conference. It was dominated. I did represent muscle, and I made a presentation, but it was dominated by the people who were interested in water. And there I met Gilbert Ling, the guy who my next door neighbor sitting at the table said some kind of crackpot. I found he was not a crackpot at all. I found that his presentation was so interesting about water inside the cell, and he had mounds of evidence indicating that the water was different. He even had a model, which, by the way, unfortunately we finally proved that it's not exactly right. It's different, but nonetheless, I found a dozen compatriots of his from different laboratories who had evidence to support his point of view, the general point of view that there was something in the cell, that the water was different. I was so impressed that when I came home, I gave one of his books. Before he passed, he had 7 books, I believe, mostly about water inside the cell. And the books were not easy to penetrate, by the way. Gilbert Ling had a habit of writing for himself, not for his audience. And if you were a physical chemist spending years in the same realm as he was, you probably could understand it. But it was not so easy for most of us to get through it. At any rate, I gave it to some of my students who seemed able to get through it. And every one of them told me, this is really interesting. If it's true, it will change all of biology, essentially all of nature. So, of course, that resonated with my own view. It was just corroborated by these students whose opinions I respected. And so I'm scratching my head and thinking, what can I do to make some contribution? And first thing I thought of was, I got to write a book, because his books, Ling's books, the material is so important, but the presentation is really challenging. So I wrote a book. It was called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. And it was designed originally to describe Gilbert Ling's ideas about water inside the cell. But I went beyond, and I went beyond, and Gilbert was not happy with my going beyond. And part of it has to do with being in the limelight. The book attracted quite a bit of attention, but Gilbert Ling's books did not attract a lot of attention, because I think in part because they were unreadable, and part because of the conservatism in the scientific establishment. It's really difficult to get across revolutionary ideas. And my own book was received with mixed reviews. This was published in 2001, 20 years ago. It was called Cells, Gels, and the Engines of Life. And the book began by discussing Gilbert Ling's point of view. And it went on to discuss how Gilbert Ling's view might be implemented in the cell, how this so-called, he called it structured water. We call it fourth phase water or easy water. They're all more or less the same. And Gilbert was just unhappy with me, and he wrote an email, and it was not cool. He described in this one paragraph email why I was completely wrong in practically everything, and also why I failed to give him due credit for his contributions. I was very careful to give him due credit. However, it's not possible to put Gilbert Ling's name on every paragraph. It gets to the point of repetition. And of course, I thought my point of view was cogent and such. But he wrote me the email, and he copied everybody in the field, you see. And this was not exactly cool. So Gilbert and I, you might say our friendship broke, and I tried devilishly hard to restore that friendship, because, basically, we've got two guys working along similar lines, but maybe slightly different points of view, and it makes sense to gather our forces together rather than to be fighting one another. And finally, I did succeed one day at a conference many years after that, when we had such clear evidence for long-range ordering of water, which was his main theme. He popped up from his seat, and he was so excited. He was practically applauding when he got up to make his comment. So anyway, we finally got together. And after having written the book, and as I said, it was mixed reviews, 2001, long time ago. The newer book, The Fourth Phase of Water, the reviews are actually amazing. I'm really flattered. But that book was mixed. Some people said, oh, this is just Gilbert Ling, and everybody knows that Gilbert Ling is wrong on practically everything. And others saying, like there's a famous biologist from Harvard University, must be right if he's from Harvard. He wrote, this is a 305-page preface to the future of cell biology. So, okay, anyway, long answer to your short question, how did I get into it? After that 2001 book, we immersed ourselves in research. I was so curious to find out more. And that's where what we found, as I described earlier, this fourth phase, that's how we began doing it. And it's been an exciting ride ever since, and it continues.
So I have a question, but I want to, Uta, do you have something? I want to
Yeah, I have a question indeed.
Okay.
You said earlier on the water in our cells has the structure of this EZ water or EZ water. So is it a health property that we should have more of this, that we should ingest more of this?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. Yeah. So, just to step back just a bit. Your cells are filled with fourth phase water, and what I outlined, or the evidence I presented in that earlier 2001 book, is that this water plays an absolutely central role in everything that the cell does. So it kind of works this way. Like if you take a cell, take a muscle cell. I know something about muscles since I was in the field for quite a while, decades. When the muscle is relaxed, not contracting, the water inside your cell is this kind of EZ water, essentially all of it, in a healthy cell. And when your muscle cell is activated to contract, what happens is that this water undergoes a transition from the fourth phase water to ordinary water. Okay, and that's a trigger that for the cell to contract. And the way it works is that the water interacts with the proteins, and together they undergo a transition from this relaxed state to the activated state. The water actually changes to ordinary water, and the proteins undergo a giant conformational change, and together that brings about contraction. And then to complete the cycle, what happens is the EZ water is then restored, and for this you need energy. See, and if you got enough energy, all the EZ water comes back to its original state. If you're deficient in some way, which means dysfunctional, pathological, whatever, it doesn't build up all the way. And if it doesn't build up all the way, then the process that I just went through can't occur, or it can't occur effectively. So it's really important to make sure that the amount of EZ water that you have in your cells, you look very healthy, so you got no problems anywhere, I think. Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, looks that way.
Hope so.
Yeah, hope so too. You need to, the EZ water needs to be essentially fully built. So you need to do that, you need adequate energy. So for example, if you've just completed 2 matches of tennis and you've had it, if you drink a few liters of water, usually you're somewhat restored and pretty quickly. And the reason you're restored, from the evidence we have, is it just builds up the EZ water inside your cells, and your cells are ready to go again. They're not tired out, dysfunctional, whatever. See, and you could maybe, not me, could play another match of tennis. So you could get there if you like. So it's really important, and that leads to maybe a slightly more extensive discussion on how you can keep that EZ water topped up, built, and there are half dozen different ways, simple ways, straightforward ways that you can do it, and I can list them. It takes a few minutes if you like, but I think you may have other questions that you want to ask, but it's up to you.
Do go on. I'd love to hear, because
okay.
How do we extract it? How do we get it? What do we do?
Okay, well, the first thing you can do is drink more water, because what happens is when you drink the water, it gets converted. Your body converts it into EZ water. And by the way, I should have mentioned it earlier. The fuel to do this conversion and to separate the charge also, like your cell phone, you need to plug it in. You need a source of energy to recharge. Same thing with this EZ water. In order to build it, to create order and to separate charge, you need energy. And we found that this energy comes from infrared light. And most people are not so familiar with infrared, but it's not very complicated. It's just It's light you can't see. It's beyond the wavelength red. It's infrared. It's slightly longer wavelength, and it's everywhere. You can detect it. Turn off all the lights. You can't see anything. Your cell phone camera records nothing. But if you whip out a camera that has an infrared sensor instead of a visible light sensor, you get a beautiful image of everything. I'd be able to see you, your headphones, your speaker, your smile, everything. Even because everything is generating infrared energy. And if you have a source of infrared that is heat, pretty much, then you have more of it. So anyway, so you need the fuel to build it, and you drink the water, and you've got lots of fuel from outside your body, as I described, and also inside, because metabolism is going on, generating heat, infrared, and that builds easy water. So that's the easiest, is just drink a lot of water. And you may be familiar with the book that was written by Bat Mangalej. Do you know that name, or is that no? He was an Iranian doctor, and he was thrown into prison, political prison, during the I guess Iranian Revolution. And it's a notorious prison where conditions are not great. It's inside Tehran. It's one of the more famous prisons, known for its brutality. And all the other political prisoners, there's no doctor except this guy who was a physician. He was thrown in. And so they got sick. And who do they go to? This guy. He didn't have penicillin. He didn't have anything. All he had was water. He said, drink a lot of water. And remarkably, in his book, he describes, it's called You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty. He describes what happened inside this prison and how these prisoners were cured just by drinking amazing amounts of water. Okay, so that's number one. Drink a lot of water, and you can then restore the EZ, adequate amounts. Okay, second one is the kind of water. So if you get your water from plants, for example, if you take plants and you squeeze them, so-called juicing, you squeeze the juice out of them and drink that. Many health practitioners have reported that it works. It doesn't matter what the problem is. You do this juicing, and a few months later, whatever the issue was that you had has gotten better. This is what I've heard from the practitioners, and maybe Udo, you are familiar. Yeah. So why does this work? Well, I think it works because inside the plant, the plant cells are filled with easy water. They're fresh, young, healthy, growing, and you squeeze the easy water out. You drink it. And you're basically skipping the step of creating easy water because you're swallowing the easy water, and so it fills your cells more easily. And I think this could be the reason why that works. So that's the second one. Third one is going out in the sun. So are you Portuguese to begin with, or Scandinavian in some?
No, I'm German, actually.
German, okay. Northern
but I live in
Germany?
Portugal since 20 years now. So.
Oh, okay. So if you're in northern Germany, around Hamburg and whatever, or Scandinavia, you know that in the wintertime, you don't get a whole lot of sun. It's the same where I live in the Northwest. We don't get a lot of sun. It's kind of rainy in the winter. And when the sun comes poking through, which is, I think, doing right now, you feel good. And so why do you feel good? Well, the usual interpretation is, well, you're feeling good because light comes through. It's a psychological issue, and it might well be. However, the sun is full of infrared energy. Something like 50% of the energy of the sun is light, visible light, and 50% roughly is infrared, which gives us the warmth of the sun. See, so going out in the sun means suddenly you're bombarded by infrared energy, and that builds easy water. And especially if you don't have too much hair, it gets through very easily. And in your brain, which whose default condition is feeling good, not feeling depressed, feeling good, you get this infrared energy, builds easy water in your brain cells, and you feel better. So that's another possibility. Fourth one is related to that. It's going into a sauna. We say sauna, but you say sauna. And I think probably many people tuning in have enjoyed that. I have as well. And I can tell you from experience, you go in tired and you come out rejuvenated. And I, believe me, have had that experience, including at a scientific conference it was in Finland, and pretty far north. And after the session was over, I was just hoping time to go back to our hotel and go to sleep. I was jet lagged and tired, but they announced it was time to go into the sauna. And so I did. And I was so tired. That's the last thing I wanted to do. But after 20 minutes or so, it was like I just had 8 hours of sleep. Let's get going again, start the dancing. So anyway, sauna is another. Another one, I think we're up to number 5, I guess, is certain herbs. Eating, starting in Ayurvedic times, how many, 5,000 years ago, or even more, people were just as concerned about health then than now. We didn't have the advent of pharmaceuticals, if you will. I say because we not so clear. At any rate, they didn't have modern medicine, but they were acutely concerned about health, and they found that various herbs were very good for health. And we, modern medicine has largely lost sight of that, but it's there, and it's thousands of years old. And if we're prudent, we don't dismiss the ideas of the ancients. And so we tried some of those to see whether their curative effects might actually stem from buildup of easy water. And we did some experiments over a period of several years, and every one we looked at built easy water at concentrations that would be normal, that we'd have in the body. So, for example, turmeric is one of them. Holy basil is another one that we looked at. Ghee is another, and in fact, ghee created the biggest exclusion zones, or the largest amount of fourth phase water that we've seen. Very powerful in doing that. Even aspirin, which is, of course, natural product from the bark of the willow tree, built easy water, et cetera, et cetera. And then, just as a comparison, as a control, we took a poison to see what that would do. And that poison was glyphosate. And we put glyphosate instead of tulsi, or instead of turmeric, whatever. And it did nothing but diminish easy water. And so that was a really positive result for us, control, because not everything builds easy water, but especially those substances that are good for health build easy water. So we published those results, and I think the result is real. And okay, so finally, number 6, I'm happy I can remember all of them, is earthing or grounding. And I think many people are becoming aware that if you connect yourself electrically to the earth, it's good for health, good for your well-being. So it's like like walking on the beach near the water. You feel good. Most of us feel good, and you're connecting yourself electrically. You're barefoot to the earth, or you can bury yourself in a mud bath and the same. And I remember as a kid, it's one of the fondest memories, being being buried in Brighton Beach and Brooklyn in New York, getting buried in the sand by my friends, not completely, but up to my neck. I could still breathe. And I was buried and so electrically connected. At the time, I, of course, didn't even think of it. But I remember the feeling of bliss that occurred. And I remember it so distinctly because it was like nothing else. I was maybe 10 years old or something like that. And the bliss was amazing. And finally, it was time to go home, and they had to unbury me. And I simply didn't want to get unburied. It was so powerful. And so I think a lot of people have realized there have been a lot of biophysical studies dealing with this and demonstrating positive effects throughout your body, and being able to sleep and reduction of pain and all kinds of things. And the question is why? Okay, and so you'll guess what my answer is, and to give you that answer, which I think is so extremely simple, you have to back up a step and understand about the Earth, and that the Earth is negatively charged. Who would know that? So in Portugal, I bet they teach that. I know in Russia they teach that because it was my Russian friend who told me about it. And he said, the Earth is negatively charged. And I said, you're crazy, Andre. I started my career in electrical engineering as an undergraduate, and no professor ever told me that the Earth was negatively charged. You know, you stick the prong in, it's got 3 prongs, and the third one, the round one, at least in the US, is connected to 0 electrical potential, neutrality. And nobody ever said anything different. 4 years of study. He said, well, obviously the US educational system is deficient, because in Russia, even middle school students know that the Earth is negatively charged. So embarrassed. I still didn't believe him. And the next day, one of my students came to me with Richard Feynman, the great Nobel physicist, with his lectures, book of lectures, volume 2, chapter 9. The whole chapter is devoted to the negative charge of the Earth. That convinced me. There's lots of evidence. It's just that in the US, we've forgotten it. So what you're doing by walking barefoot near or getting buried in the sand or in a mud bath is connecting yourself to a practically infinite supply of negative charge, basically electrons. Now, what happens is if you do is that if you have a cell, for example, that doesn't have much easy water, it's not very negative. Most cells would be very negative, filled with easy water, but if they don't have enough, it's not very negative. And all these negative charges run to fill up the cell. And what they do is they convert the ordinary water in the cell to easy water, because we found in the laboratory, you take a glass of water, you put 2 electrodes in, and right next to that negative electrode, easy water builds. It gets converted by that negative charge from ordinary water to easy water. So to summarize this long story, I think the reason why you feel good when you connect yourself to the Earth, no matter how you do it, it doesn't really matter, is that the negative charge from the Earth seeps into your body, creating easy water. And because it creates easy water, you feel better. So anyway, I've outlined 6 different ways, and they're not complicated ways. They're actually pretty simple ways in which you can feel better. So I'm sorry, long answer to a short question.
No, we love it.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we love
Wonderful.
it.
Absolutely.
So I'm just curious, does this easy water resemble something like mercury in its looks?
No.
Okay.
Its looks. So, that's a good question. It's a question nobody ever asked me. And I don't know why you would suggest mercury, because, mercury has a kind of silver color that beads up.
And it's kind of, it's silvery, but it also has, it just seems waterish, but it also has some kind of
You mean
form.
texture, I think.
Yeah, kind of. It, when you see it in a thermometer, you see it bubbles up.
It's more like rather than mercury, raw egg white is maybe a better descriptor. It's a gel. It's a kind of loose gel, and it could be depending on the conditions. It could be stiffer gel or looser gel, but it's actually gel-like, and the gel sticks to the surfaces that help create it. Right? Remember, I mentioned that when water meets the surface, it starts building into layers of easy water, and those layers stick to the solid surface. You see, and that's why when you puncture yourself, it doesn't come out, because this jello-like or gel-like material sticks as egg white would stick. So I think more than mercury, it's best. It's more akin to raw egg white.
This is fascinating, and I mean, because so often people will say, drink water, you'll lose weight, or if you come off the tennis court, just naturally, people will say you need to drink more. You need to drink some water, but
I've heard the
you
same.
don't always know why.
Yeah, well, I've heard the same. The people who send their patients to do the juicing, they come back in a few months, they feel better, and they've also lost weight. So at least with that kind of water, the anecdotal reports are that you lose weight. The truth of it, I don't know, but that's what I've heard.
So before we actually went live, I had mentioned to you about hidden messages in water, that I had the pleasure of interviewing Emoto many, many years ago. And you had said that you wrote something in a comment. Is that correct?
Yeah, they asked me to write a foreword to the book that came out 20 years after the first book. So there's another book released 1 year ago, and it's called, again, Messages from Water, The Final. It was put together by Hiro Emoto, or Emoto, which I'm told is the correct pronunciation, Emoto. He's the one managing the entire operation now. And, I'm connected with all those people. They asked me to write a foreword, which I did, to the book, and they invited me to make a presentation at the release of the book in Tokyo. And I was indeed there and happy to do so. So I've been connected with that organization now for some time, and I think what you're getting at, Marilyn, is what does all of this have to do with Emoto, with easy water, and I think there is a connection there. Let me start by issuing a disclaimer that the work of Emoto is not a scientific work. He always said it's a spiritual work, and therefore the methods that he used were methods that don't jibe with a scientific kind of thinking. In other words, what he did, for those people who are not familiar, is he would take a petri dish full of water, and he would stand in front of it and project his thoughts, his intention onto the water. And if his intention was positive, then after he would freeze the water and look at the crystals, he would find beautiful crystals. And if his intention was negative, like, oh, you fool, or something like this, I hate you, which is not common for him, the crystals would turn out ugly. But he would cherry pick them. He would pick the best one to illustrate his point. He wouldn't choose them at random. And therefore, scientists reflexively rejected what he did and dismissed it. So this work has not made its way at all into the scientific community, who view it as nonsense. However, when we found easy water, I saw a connection, because easy water is like a crystal, and it's not like ordinary liquid water where the molecules are randomly oriented and bouncing around at a gazillion times per second, where there could be no reasonable possibility of storing any kind of information. But easy water could, because it's a crystal, and crystals store information. So, for example, the thumb drive in your computer is built of a three-dimensional array of transistors. And each transistor has two states, like a 0, 1, on, off, and each one can be addressed independently, and that's how you can store information. Easy is very similar. It's a 3D array of oxygens and hydrogens, and it turns out that the oxygens can have not only two states, but actually 5 different states, so-called oxidation states. -2 is the common one for oxygen that we know about, but the textbooks always also tell us that there's -1, 0, +1, +2. It means that each of those oxygens, in theory anyway, can take on 5 different states, not just 2. So not only could easy water store information, but the information density is huge, huge. And it wouldn't surprise me if one day we could figure out details of how you can address the individual oxygens, that computer memories might be made of easy water. In fact, easy water can be turned into a solid at room temperature. We've done it, and it was first demonstrated by some Italians. So this is all very interesting, and it led me to think that there may be something that the scientists are rejecting in what Emoto is doing, something scientifically valid. Now, that's not been established, but I think the theoretical basis is there. And because of that, there's been a close connection between our laboratory and what's going on at Emoto's place in Tokyo. So it's exciting for me. And since then, many groups have demonstrated information storage in water. And I organize each year the annual conference of the Physics, Chemistry, and Biology of Water. And this fall, it's annual. This fall in Germany, we missed a year. It'll be near Frankfurt, easy to get to. And at the conference each year, almost always there are 2 or 3 or 4 presentations that deal scientifically with memory of water. So this is now, at least at our conference, the people who attend our conference, I would say that there are a few people who are not absolutely convinced that water has the capacity to store information. And I think that capacity lies in easy water, which is much like a computer memory. And so that's the connection between the two. And I think it's exciting because, in my own opinion, the idea of water memory is a frontier in science. It connects somewhat with the idea of spirituality and science. And the two used to be connected tightly, but in modern science, the two have been divorced. And most scientists think that spirituality has no place at all, no connection with science. I'm not so sure that that's true.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, so what's the information that it's storing? And is that also how we are connected?
Yes. This may indeed be how we're connected. So it may be that the two of us are connecting that way in subtle ways that have not yet been elucidated. It might also be that inside your body, there's communication that goes on from one protein to another protein or one cell to another cell. That's been very nicely demonstrated by Luc Montagnier, who won the Nobel Prize for identifying HIV, and he comes to our conference each year. And he's been studying the transmission of information in water. Amazing results. He found that if you put DNA in water, that information from the DNA sequence in water can be transmitted through the air from from one container, one glass container, sealed, to another sealed container right next to it. It boggles the mind to think about this, but apparently it's been duplicated by several other laboratories. And if true, it means that inside your body, one molecule can be sending information to another molecule and communicating that way in ways that we might not ever have conceived. So this is an incipient revolution in science, and I think it's a frontier issue that is being addressed right now by too few scientists who separate any kind of spirituality as woo-woo kinds of stuff that should be readily dismissed and not considered.
Well,
Yeah, I don't know. It always fascinates me when we try to separate science from spirituality. I just don't know how you do that.
Well, I hear you, and I think both of us maybe would predict that more of that will be coming in the future. And I hope that
Right.
I hope that our conference, our annual conference, which is getting more and more popular, can present the evidence for it. And, if you've got enough evidence, you do need to listen. Although the scientific establishment is actually, I must say, pretty conservative. Likes to stick to what it knows as being quote unquote true.
Interesting. Uta,
It's very, very interesting when we come to think of homeopathy. As a homeopath, have to mention this. If we find out that homeopathy works along the lines of memory in water, then we are very close to proving the efficacy of homeopathy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the efficacy of homeopathy has already been proved. It's just that the obstacle. I myself know of so many people who use it to solve problems that can't be otherwise solved. So, and also I also know veterinarians who use it on horses and dogs and such, and they keep coming back. And so it must be working. Otherwise, the owners of these animals wouldn't support them. They'd be out of business. And it's not likely that there's some kind of psychological placebo effect or whatever. You think that the horses wouldn't get that, although who knows. So it's just the scientific basis, and I think that the most profound work in that came from the late Alexander Konovalov. Recently passed a Russian who is a distinguished scientist, an academician in Russia, the highest level, who was rector of his university and director of a prestigious research institute. And he started studying, I guess maybe you know his work, he studied high dilutions and what happens. And, one of the arguments against homeopathy is if you dilute and dilute and dilute, you wind up with nothing, and therefore it's just water. And how can water have any possible effect? Well, so easy water can, as I mentioned, but what he found was not directly related to easy water. He found that when you do these dilutions, you don't get what conventional chemists expect. By the time you've done the third, fourth, or fifth dilution, you begin to detect what he called nanoparticles in the water. So the nano aggregates, I guess he called them. And the next dilution, they get bigger and more frequent, and then they begin to decline again, dilution by dilution. And then later, at several more dilutions, they begin to pick up again and then decline. And there's a certain periodicity to it. So it's not what something is going on is different from the ordinary theory. And he found that this doesn't work at all if you don't do succussion between the dilutions, and it doesn't occur if you block the external energy from coming in. Those two are fundamental requirements for those. I don't know how widespread his results are. They are translated, many of them, into English, but this is a most impressive guy whose work is outstanding. No question about it. And I think if serious criticism of homeopathy, the people who do that ought to read his work before they go on to criticize, because this is fundamental, absolutely fundamental work that needs to be taken into account. And personally, I think the easy water must somehow be involved, because that's the natural substrate for storing information. And probably those nano aggregates that Konovalov found probably contain a lot of easy water with information memory. So that's my comment about that.
Fascinating, absolutely. I've learned a lot today, so I'm very glad we could have you on the show. Marilyn?
Yeah, I mean, I found it to be fascinating and my ears were glued, and unfortunately, we're almost out of time. So is there a book or, I mean, anything that you want to promote to our audience now? Because they're all listening.
Yes, I would really, the book that I would promote, if you will, it's been very popular. It's called The Fourth Phase of Water. And it's translated into, I think, 9 languages or something. And you know, it's been very popular. If you check, for example, the reviews on Amazon, it's designed for the non-expert. It talks about water, it talks about fourth phase water, and it does it in a way that I hope, is reader friendly. You don't need to be an expert. I could even understand it myself.
Sounds good to us, right? Yeah, I mean, this is a very important topic. So I'm glad we, we were able to have you join us today. Is there anything in final that you want to say in summing up?
Well, I've got maybe 30 seconds or 1 minute. I just want to, I guess what I would like to say, I'd like to say something about science in general. It used to be that science produced scientific revolutions. 100 years ago, almost every year there was a new revolution, particularly in the area of physics. Quantum mechanics and relativity, and they just came practically annually. But now they're not coming. And if you ask yourself, what scientific revolution can I name that's occurred? Not technological revolutions. There are plenty of them, like your laptop computer, etc. But I mean scientific revolutions of the quality of splitting of the atom or the genetic code. That was, I think, 65 years ago. And the splitting of the atom was 75 or 80 years ago. What can you name that's equivalent, that's happened in the past 20 or 30 years, when there's been huge amounts of money from the government? Almost nothing. And the question is why? And I think the government sponsorship has brought with it certain restrictions that don't easily permit scientists to challenge mainstream views. Science has become conservative. If you challenge the prevailing view, your application for money gets reviewed by those experts who are the champions of the prevailing view, and they want to preserve their standing. And so you lose. And I think that's the reason why scientists shy away from revolutionary challenges. And that's why we have few scientific revolutions, unfortunately. And the system needs to change. We have an organization that we created to help do that. It's called the Institute for Venture Science. If anybody is interested, we're looking for donors, supporters, and this is organized specifically to support revolutionary science. It's IV Science, as in intravenous, ivscience.org. Please visit and contact me if you're interested. So I think I would quit there.
Thank you.
Wait a
Thank
second.
you.
I've got a quick question that's
Yeah.
hopefully a yes or no answer. Jerry, is there such a thing as drinking too much water?
I can't answer that question. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
All right. That's good. That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pollack, for getting up so early to join us here on the HealthInn Show. It's been a fantastic hour. I learned a lot. Thank you very much.
It's been great fun. I'm glad
Thank
you
you.
woke me up.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're glad we woke you up too. Uta, any final remarks? Anything going on? HWC?
HWC, homeopathyworldcommunity.com. Check out the calendar. All our events coming up this month and next month will always be up there. You can register via the calendar for all of these events. So come and join us. We're having a roundtable discussion soon. We'll be having a fantastic webinar with, oh dear, I'm all water still, so
That's all right.
some water.
The information's
Just check
going
out
to
the
come.
calendar.
Yeah.
You need
Just
more
look.
easy water.
I need more easy water right now.
Yeah, really. I'm going to be drinking.
Me too.
So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this most important show that we had. We look forward to seeing you next month and always. Please stay in touch, take care, and reach out anytime. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.